So you may have just heard that recording in progress. We are recording. You are not visible on screen right now, or you're also muted, but we're going to open that up later, but you're welcome to stay off screen and muted if you don't want to be visible on a recording. Documented people know everything that's in them all the time, right? And it's like, no, not really. Things are always changing. When you're talking about plants and animals, wildlife, there's new things coming in, other things leaving, for better or worse, either going extinct or just like leaving an area for whatever reason. There could be all sorts of reasons for that. So we really need your help to keep on top of it, because people can't be everywhere. And so a lot of these canyons really haven't been surveyed, I think since the early 90s, as far as documenting what is up to date living there, plants and animals wise. And this also changes like seasonally. So it's not just a matter of, going out there once, but throughout the course of the year, different seasons. People say San Diego doesn't have seasons, but we do. They're just really nuanced. And if you're going out there and observing, you kind of get used to those nuances. But those change as well too, especially with climate change factors that's affecting seasonality of things. So there's just so much to document, and we need your help getting out there and documenting it. And even if you're not specifically even in San Diego, that's the kind of neat thing about iNaturalist, is you can be anywhere and use it, which is super, super cool. So you don't have to be in San Diego to use it. You can use it anywhere, and there are going to be people that are finding what you found to be useful for their research, but then also just finding what you found to be useful just for themselves and getting out and exploring nature. So you're adding to that inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Lauren did go in depth about what iNaturalist is exactly, but essentially it is a social networking tool to connect with nature and explore and share your observations of the natural world. So it is kind of like a social networking app, which is exciting. You can really connect with other people who are in your neighborhood, in your community, find other botanists or people that are interested in birds or what have you. But the great thing is your observations are available to everybody that is interested in iNaturalist. So anybody from, let's say Ruffin Canyon can look and see what's in Manzanita Canyon just by observing iNaturalist. Mm-hmm. And there are many reasons to use iNaturalist. One of them is it's a great tool to become a community scientist, but it's a great way to also document biodiversity. So San Diego County is a biodiversity hotspot. And what that means is there is a huge variety of life in one particular region. And we are the most biodiverse county in the lower 48 states, which is incredible. And as Lauren mentioned, we're a huge city, but yet we have this amazing biodiversity. And that's largely due to, our microclimate, as well as the little pockets of nature that we have within our canyon spaces. And that is incredible. And so we want to be able to see what is where, when. So how to see how things change over time. And also, it provides a record of what is living here when. It provides a great opportunity to explore your canyon spaces, learn about the wildlife that's right here in your community. And it also is contributing to larger science projects that we will go into in depth in a minute. So lots of really good reasons to why you should be using iNaturalist. It's also free. So it's just a really great way to really feel like you're a part of something bigger, especially in this natural world and in this science community.
Yeah, it's been nice to get to connect with people. Sorry.
Yeah.
Even during quarantine, because you're still I'm kind of vicariously living through some of the people I follow on iNaturalist and seeing what they're posting about and where they're going, and it's just really cool.
And you start to kind of recognize the people that are consistently IDing your observations as well.
For sure. Really, yes. One name you'll see a lot is Jay Redman, and that's our curator of botany, John Redman. And we'll talk a little bit about his project later, but he's really wanting to document all the plants in San Diego County. So he is going to get on there and ID your plants for you right away. He's excellent at doing that. I don't think he sleeps. But I was also going to say, when you were talking about it, Kendra, something that came up to me was kind of like, I've been asked before, why document what is where? For people that aren't in the natural history museum world or the, like the field of biology, because, you know, a good way to look at it is to think about endangered species. If we don't know, kind of, we don't have this like picture in time of what things look like at a certain point, we don't know if it's changing. So if, you know, if species disappear and we never knew they were there to begin with, did they really disappear? It's like that if a tree falls in the woods, sort of a thing. So what you're doing with iNaturalist is helping make a record of all those things, and people do look on these for species counts and things like that. So it's really important.
Absolutely. Yeah, the data collection is critical. And this is just a screenshot from Google Maps of San Diego. And I just absolutely love this picture because it really gives you perspective on the canyons we have in San Diego. You know, a lot of people were born and raised here and might not even know that there's a canyon within their neighborhood. And here you can see tens, if not hundreds of canyons. And again, that is part of the reason why we have so much biodiversity here in San Diego, is because there's just these pockets of nature all across the city that native plants and therefore native insects and birds and mammals are absolutely thriving. Maybe not thriving, but living. And we're trying to make them thrive, you know? So this is just a really good example. If you couldn't wrap your head around all the canyons, this is a really good perspective and a great map. And we are hoping to be able to have a naturalist presence in each and every one of the canyons that, like Lauren said, is just a document of what is there. So just love this picture.
I love that picture too. And I'm sorry if you're hearing background noise. I have a daughter who is fighting going to bed. I think that's a timeless fight, right? Yeah. So a little bit of how iNaturalist works, like Kendra mentioned, it's social networking and also like a geo mapping function. So it's kind of, it's really, I feel like pretty one of a kind in that feature, in that you're uploading photos of wild plants and animals you find, all these different examples of biodiversity that you're coming across, and then you're actually sharing it out with people. And when you share it out with people, they look at it and they identify it for you. The app itself also has a really good AI in that it's able to suggest an identification of what you're seeing as well. So if you're not sure of what you're seeing, doesn't matter. You don't need to know. It'll suggest it. I use it all the time for weird insects in my yard that I want to know what they are. And we'll show you kind of how to actually physically do that in the app, but it's really handy to get to use. And then also on the back end, people will look at that and say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. And like I mentioned before, our curator of botany, John Redman, uses it quite a bit, and he'll go on there and ID, and so he will let you know exactly what plant you're seeing if you're not sure. Others in the community will agree to this, and then that actually will change like the level of your observation to research grade. And so if enough people agree on what the ID is, it becomes research grade, and other people on the back end will pull that into their projects. So for example, at the museum, I mentioned the plant atlas. We also have a herp atlas, so reptiles and amphibians of Southern California and Baja California. There's an iNaturalist project associated with that, and we'll give you a link to join both of those projects later. Same with the bumblebees project that the Nat runs. So anytime you upload anything that meets those requirements, which is being Southern California, San Diego County, and then a plant, a reptile, a herp, or a bumblebee, it's added to those projects, and our researchers use it, and people all over the world use it. So it's pretty neat. And then you can also use different functions where you're going in and you're IDing for people. We're not going to get into kind of the technology of that tonight, but happy to talk to anybody about it, ask questions, and we'll share some tutorials too that show how you can do that if you want to start using your ID knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that I didn't necessarily recognize when I first started using iNaturalist, is that like there are people on the other side viewing my observations. And that is just super cool. And also, like, you know, I like to hike a lot, and I am really trying to build my knowledge on birds and insects, and iNaturalist has done wonders for me on that, because like Lauren was saying, it has an AI where you'll take a picture of a plant and it'll give you like top 10 guesses, and you can kind of figure out like, oh, okay, maybe that's in this family. And then once you suggest that, and then people are confirming your observations, then hey, you just learned a new plant, and that is just super cool. Awesome. So let's get down to the nitty gritty. Many of you may have never used the app before. Some of you are more familiar. So we're just going to do an overview, and Lauren is going to keep an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop questions in the chat and Lauren will address those. So if you haven't already, go ahead and download the iNaturalist app. It's completely free. And then once you have it downloaded, you will need to make an account, which is just an email and a password. And we're going to show you how to join projects so you can be a community scientist and participate in those active projects that are happening right now, as well as just making simple observations and ways to make your observations better, and being able to really get into the feed of the people that are going to be identifying your observations, and just some tips and tricks on how to be a better community scientist and a better iNaturalist user. And then of course, we are going to open it up at the end where we can have a conversation and answer questions. But so go ahead and get your phone out. And I will say, I have an iPhone and I will be showing you how to do it on an iPhone. However, my understanding is on an Android, it's very intuitive and a very similar process. So if you do have an Android, the steps should be very similar, but just some of the icons will be a little different. So go ahead and pull up your iNaturalist app. And if you've never made any observations, this will be blank, but if you've made a few, then of course it will show your most recent observations. And the first thing we're going to do is join a project. So Lauren mentioned that the NAT has a lot of community science projects that are actively ongoing. And one that we're going to be joining is the San Diego Plant Atlas. And we're also going to be joining the Canyonlands project, which is in development. But if you join now, you should still be able to participate in the future when that really gets up and running. So first things first, and I'm going to go slow because the app isn't always the quickest and it's holding a lot of data. So just give it some time. It's okay. We're going to move pretty slow. So don't feel like you're going to fall behind. And if you do, we'll catch you up at the end when we have our questions. So go to the More button, which on the iPhone is on the bottom right, and it's the 3 dots. On the Android, I believe it's the upper left, and it's 3 lines, but just where you go for more. Once you're there, this page will pop up, and we're focusing on projects, so go ahead and just ignore the guides, and you're going to click on the projects, and then it's going to bring you to this page here. And it'll most likely be empty because maybe you haven't joined a project yet. So we're going to join the San Diego Canyonlands data collection, and then also the San Diego County Plant Atlas. So just do one at a time. Start with whichever one, and I'll show you what that looks like when you click on it and how you join. So first, projects. We'll pop over here, and this is what it looks like when you access the San Diego County Plant Atlas. And you'll see that the first button on the left says join. And again, there are over 500,000 observations on this project. So your phone might move a little slow just because it's like looking at all these pictures and uploading them. So you might see this little wheel for a minute, and that's okay. And you'll know that you've joined successfully when instead of the join button right here, it's leave. So go ahead and do that for both. Once you join one, you can just hit this back arrow on the left-hand corner. That will take you back to the search bar. Then you'll search the next one, either Canyonlands or the NAT, and then do the same process. I'm going to allow just a minute to allow you all to catch up and to join those projects and make sure that everybody is on board. And Lauren, are we having any questions in the chat?
I'm not seeing any right now.
Cool.
Okay, so Vicky is saying she doesn't see the San Diego Canyonland project. So I will say that it's, oh, and please review how to get where you are. So if we take a step back and look, and I will also say that if you are not, it is not an intuitive search. Like, they have a great AI for species that will blow your mind, but when it comes to search functionality, it's a little not as great as it could be. So if anything is misspelled, there's an extra space, it's not gonna bring anything up. Just so double check what you're putting in there. Also, as Kendra did say, it can really take a minute for things to come up. So try that again and let's see what's going on. I'm going to try it as well because I actually
I wonder, Lauren, if you wouldn't mind looking up the San Diego Canyonlands data collection, because I'm wondering too if there might be some privacy issues with that, because it is a newer.
Oh, project. Vicky says she found it. That's great. Yay. Okay. Good. Yeah. And it is kind of clunky and slow, so it's not you. But yeah, as Kendra said, there's just a ton of information on iNaturalist, and they're storing a lot of data. So they have agreed very kindly to keep this app and collecting all the data and storing the data, as long as they can in the foreseeable future, which is a lot, and it's a lot of people's research. Which is very kind of them. They have a lot of grants, and the app itself is actually run out of Cal Academy up in San Francisco, and so they very kindly offer this free app to people. But yeah, there's a lot on the back end, a lot of upkeep, so that is why sometimes it can be a little slow. There's a lot of data there. As you saw, just this one project the Plant Atlas has 500,000 observations, which is 500,000. Crazy. And John himself got some identification or some recognition the other day. He's made over 200,000 IDs, which is amazing. It's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah. Seriously. Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot.
Yeah.
But it will not. Somebody is asking if a project with over 500,000 observations uses up your iPhone storage or memory. So no, it's that's all in a cloud, so it's not operating off of your storage or memory. It's operating off of whatever internet user you're using. It's not charging you. It's not like a metered charge. It's just kind of like if you are using, well, I shouldn't say that. If you're using your Wi-Fi, whatever charges you have for your Wi-Fi, that's what it's going to be. So if you have Wi-Fi on your plan, that's like whatever is included with your plan. It's not
no additional fees, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to just go back because I know that some people were requesting just a quick review. So again, when you open your iNaturalist app, bottom right-hand corner, the 3 dots on an iPhone, it's going to be in the top left on an Android. Go ahead and click that. It should bring you to this page on the left. You'll go ahead and click projects. And then once you're on the project page is where you will search San Diego County Plant Atlas, excuse me, and the San Diego Canyonland Data Collection Project. And correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, but once you're on these projects, anything that you record that's within the data map within the project will automatically be pulled from your observations and put into the project.
So yes and no. So it does depend on how the project was set up by whoever set up the project. So some projects will, if you've joined it automatically, what you are observing that meets the criteria will go to it. Other projects want you to add it. So as far as the Plant Atlas and San Diego Canyonlands, my understanding is those are both set up so it automatically will go, or they will find it and pull it into the project. So you don't have to worry about that. But for other projects that we're not a part of, they may ask that you add it. So
yeah,
it can be different. Okay. And there are some other questions that might be we can save to the end, but we will be recording this and sharing this to YouTube, so we can definitely share that. Happy to share the slides. There's an educator as well that was interested in that. And then there's a question about if iNaturalist lets you know if there's a plant, if you're making an observation of a species that is invasive, and it does. It has a little icon, and it lets you know that it's invasive.
Yeah, if you take a photo, and we'll go more in depth in this, and I'm going to go ahead and move on from the projects and talk about making an observation, which relates to that question. So hopefully we've all successfully joined one or both projects. Again, if your iPhone or Android is being slow, no worries. Like Lauren said, this will be up on YouTube, so you can always come back. But this is the exciting part, I think, is making the observations. So you want to go ahead and get back to the main page where you'll see that bar at the bottom. And on an iPhone, it is a camera. And on an Android, is it a plus mark, Lauren? Do you remember what the icon is?
Yes, it is a plus mark.
Okay, perfect. So, but it should still be at that bottom bar. So this is the fun stuff, right? So you want to make an observation, and you can do quite a few things. What I often do is take photos outside of the app because it's just a little easier. Or if I don't have service and I'm hiking, I'll take a bunch of pictures and then upload it to iNaturalist. So you'll see that there are options. You could either right away click on the camera function, and I recommend you having it in your phone right now and just messing around with it. And you can make an observation directly from iNaturalist by just taking a picture through the app's camera. But you can also upload photos. Even if you took a picture last weekend, you can upload those pictures of whatever species that you are trying to make an observation on. And then this is a new function. You can record sounds, which is super cool, but it is new, so there might be some glitches, but it'd be really beneficial for birds. I myself am a birder, but I'm terrible at bird calls, so this will definitely come in handy for me. And yeah, I think that's really fun. So, and you can also do a no photo observation. However, if you are trying to make an observation of something, do your best to get the best photo you can and take multiple photos. So of course, this is kind of tricky to do via Zoom. Ideally, we would be out in the field, and hopefully anybody who is interested, we can create an event where we'll be able to go hike and take true observations in the fields. But as for now, conceptually, this is how it functions. So you can upload photos that you've previously taken on your phone, or you can take photos directly from the app. Either work great. I just personally like using my camera app on my phone first and then going to iNaturalist. I have found it just to be easier, but like I said, both function just fine. So this is a puppy that I found in Olivia Canyon in the middle of a restoration site where poppies weren't planted, which was very cool to see one just pop up. What are they called that? I think I just had a revelation. So you'll take a picture of whichever plant. Plants are the easiest because they don't move, right? So I would recommend, as a novice iNaturalist, to focus on plants first. And you can see I only took one picture, which is not great iNaturalist etiquette, but this is just for this presentation. You do want to take multiple pictures if possible. So if you're looking at a flower, that's a really good way to identify a plant. So take a picture of the flower as well as taking a picture of the stem and the leaf, and maybe use your thumb for scale. And then, so when you take a photo, there'll be a couple options. You'll see that it has the automatic geographic location. That is almost always the case. It will automatically say where you're at, but sometimes it won't for whatever reason. So you might have to just manually put your GPS there, or it'll take you to a map and you just pinpoint where you are. It also takes note of the time and the month, which is really important because, again, we're trying to see how things change over time. So it's really important that there's a timestamp. And then also you'll notice on the captive/cultivated, again, important to know that, was this planted or was this natural? Really, we're looking for natural things. So if you're taking photos of things in your yard, which is fine, just make sure you click cultivated. Also, if you're at the zoo taking pictures of animals and putting it on iNaturalist, make sure you put captive, so we don't think there's like a leopard running around in San Diego. But this is what the first observation panel comes up. And then once you've done all this, you can go ahead and hit share. but something that's really fun and that makes the observation more searchable and more likely to be accurately identified and make it research grade is you can click this view suggestions, and that's the AI function that Lauren was mentioning previously. You click on that and it within seconds, it will either tell you what it is, what it thinks it is, but usually it will get as far as the genus. So you're trying to, I mean, I know this is a California poppy, so I clicked California poppy, but if I didn't, it would say, okay, we're thinking it's in this genus, so you go ahead and click that genus, and then you'll hit share. And then somebody with more plant knowledge will come in and be like, okay, yes, definitely in that genus, but can I further key it to the species? And often people can, which is incredible. And so since this was taken in San Diego County, it was automatically pulled into the San Diego County Plant Atlas. So we can see where there was a poppy when, and that is pretty amazing. So that is basically how you make observations. And the first couple times you do it, it's gonna go slow. You're gonna wanna make sure you're making sure that your timestamp is correct, your geolocation is correct, whether or not it's cultivated. And if you click on the projects link, it should automatically show you the Plant Atlas project. And then also you can use this as like a nature journal. You can type notes in the notes section just to say like, you know, I saw a puppy today, cool. Or like if there was other things happening, like if you were in a field of mustard and you found a poppy, that would be a cool thing to know. So yeah, that is, again, very basic on how to make observations. And Lauren is going to talk about some tips and tricks to make your observations better and how to be a better iNaturalist user. But now you kind of know why using iNaturalist is so important and why it's important to make observations and make those observations good, to make it easier for people to identify and making sure that they really are going to a bigger scientific project. Because if we're all using iNaturalist and we're all in different canyons, we're creating data for years to come, which is incredible. And we can really be part of the biodiversity project in San Diego County and really seeing what is in our canyons. And for me, you know, I hike the City Heights canyons all the time. And ironically, technology has actually slowed me down using iNaturalist to really see what's in those canyons and to make a lot of observations. I'm probably a terrible hiking partner because I stop all the time and take so many pictures, but it's just so fun to see what is in our canyons and how they change over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do the same thing. I do a lot of just go on without me, and then I'm running to catch up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's even worse when I have binoculars. So that is our observations. But I wanted to touch on something else. So again, this is a social networking platform. And as a naturalist or as somebody who is aspiring a naturalist or community scientist, you could really discover a lot of things that are right under your nose. So you can use the explore feature. And again, just going to the main page, you'll have that bottom bar where the observe camera is, but to the far left is that compass, and that's the explore page. And there are 3 options on the explore page. So you can click on that. And these are the 3 options. So you'll notice, can you see my mouse?
I can.
Okay, great. So this right here will show like a GPS location. And all of these little dots are observations people have made. I believe, Lauren, you might be able to help. Green is plants, I'm assuming.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then red, maybe insects. I know that the colors correspond with certain organisms.
They do, yeah. There are a couple that overlap in color, certain vertebrates, but yeah, so they are color coded.
Which is really cool. So this is a way, like, so this is mission trails. And you can see that's that main road that goes through it. And that's typically where people kind of stick to. And so you can see where all the observations are. And then with this same map area, you could go to this middle bar, which shows you pictures of the observations. So again, if you are, you know, just curious to see what's in those canyons, you can pick an area and explore it, and you can see photos of things that you will see on your hike or things that have been there in the past. Typically with migratory birds, it's a really cool function to see which migratory birds go where and when. And then again, you have the list version. So these are all the same observations, just 3 different ways to view them. So on the list option, it just shows you the species name, both common and scientific, and whether or not it's research grade. So you need multiple accurate identifications from the back end in order for your observation to become research grade. So you can see a couple of these are, a couple of them are not. But this, again, is just a really cool way to see what is in your canyon spaces, and just a really awesome way to connect with other like-minded individuals. And then also just kind of keep a nature journal of things that you've seen in the past, which is really fun. Yeah, so
it's kind of,
sorry, go for it.
Oh yeah, sometimes it's like nice to look through them and be like, oh yeah, I did see that, because it does keep a life list for you, you know, and so it's like your own little life list of species and stuff.
Yeah, which is really fun, and it's just a cool way to get involved in. I encourage you right now, I mean, you could use the explore function, and you don't even have to stay in San Diego. You could go to Iceland on your map and see what's there. It's really cool. So since none of us are really in canyon space right now and can't make observations, I encourage you to mess around with the explore function, because it is super cool to see what other people have seen in our local canyon spaces, as well as other places in the world.
Yeah, and so as I mentioned before, we have a couple Inapp projects that the Nat administers for you to get involved with. San Diego County Plant Atlas, which we showed you how to join. There's also its counterpart in Imperial County. And if you find yourself going to Baja a lot, there's also Baja County. I will send links to those in the chat in a second. We also have a project called Rascals, which is done in partnership with the LA County Natural History Museum. And it's Southern California reptiles and amphibians. So it's reptiles and amphibians of Southern California, and then Rascals is the name.
Really cute.
Yeah, that name. And this pulls into the Nat's Herpetology Atlas for Southern California and Baja California, which is really cool. They the Plant Atlas, all the Plant Atlas projects, as well as the Herpetology Atlas project, they take museum collections and then they also combine those with verified research grade iNaturalist observations, which somebody pointed out, Patricia, thank you, that to be a research grade observation on iNaturalist, you do have to have a photo, because people need to be able to say, oh yeah, I can see exactly what that is. It's just kind of like having a voucher for something. It's having proof that people say that you actually saw what you saw. And then they combined those research grade observations with the museum's collections, and then we can kind of make this really complete picture, you know, going back to the late 1870s of what life looked like in our region, which is pretty amazing. And as Kendra's pointed out, how it's been changing. And then Bumblebees of San Diego County, there are like about six native bumblebees. Some aren't here all year round, but we're wanting to keep an eye on them. A lot of people are worried about native bees right now, and bumblebees are a part of that. So we're trying to keep tabs on how they're doing as well. And I'm seeing some questions in the chat here that we could address now, or we can wait a moment.
We're almost to the question.
Okay, so let's just do it then, because they
Okay.
don't relate to anything necessarily super specific. I'm
Okay,
going to throw the links to these projects in the chat here, and we have been talking about this as an app. It's also a website. So once you have made your account, you can log in online. These links I'm going to send you to now are all on the website. And so you'll see it looks a little different. You can join projects there. You can play around and kind of explore what people are seeing there. And I'm happy if you have questions to reach out. I also threw some tutorials in the chat as well to help you see the functionality of the website itself. There's a lot you can do, so it's hard to cover all of it in a talk, but tips and tricks. So when you're taking observations, take multiple photos of whatever it is from different angles. If it's a plant or an animal, that always helps people on the other end identify it. So what helps me is when I'm thinking about taking photos, I'm thinking about, like, if I were seeing this outside of context, how could I identify it? And so trying to show different sides. You want to show the whole organism, like in its habitat. So a zoom out, but also really close up, any like specific markings. Profiles are really helpful of animals. When you're getting into plants, putting something in there for scale, like Kendra mentioned, and we do have a fold out that I put a link to in our chat. It's on our community science page. It's a guide to getting started, but then it also has a little ruler. It's a printout, a little centimeter ruler that you can just keep in your pocket and like throw it in the photo for scale, especially certain things you don't necessarily want to put your hands next to. If it's scat, different signs of animal life that you maybe not want to get too close to, or a plant you don't know if you shouldn't be touching it or not. You can just kind of hold this up for scale because that's helpful. Plants, it's also really helpful to always get any sort of fruit or flowers that will help identify it. That helps people on the back end identify it as well. Taking photos, you want to be sure it's in focus, which is really hard if something's moving, but as much as you can.
The fun events that we're hosting. And yeah, thank you all so much. This was really great and really fun. I hope you all learned something.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.